fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. We have, first of all, I just want to highlight that this is our 200th meeting on Easy Speak. So that was a big reason why I wanted to be a Toastmaster for this. And also, and more important news than just being the 200th speech tonight, is John Murphy's first speech, which we've been very much looking forward to. Yes, there's much cause for applause for this special day. But before we get to John's speech, and I don't want to steal the thunder from Maurice's speech either. We have to go over the roles. Will the grammarian please explain his or her role today?
Sure. I will be grammarian for today, and my role is to keep track of all the words that people know. So if you say the word of the day, which is recondite, and let me pull up a recondite definition for that.
Recognition, I think.
Recondite is an adjective, little known, obtrusive. The book is full of recondite information.
One more time, the definition?
Yeah. It's an adjective to describe something that's little known or obtrusive.
Okay.
Used in a sentence, the book is full of recondite information. And also I will be keeping track of crutch words that people use, such as so, like, you know, and words of that nature. And that is my role as grammarian.
Thanks, Cody. Will the timer please share his or her responsibilities tonight?
I will be the timer for this evening. When the speaker has reached their minimum allowed time, goal time, I will turn the light to green, and halfway through their speech, I will light the yellow, and at the maximum amount of time, I will light it to red.
Thanks, Gretchen. Can the general evaluator please talk about his or her role?
Yes. As general evaluator, I will be taking an overall input of the meeting and then giving feedback on how the meeting went, such as starting on time and things like that.
And last but not least, will the table topics master please share what happens in the table topics portion of our meeting?
As table topics master, I will be handing out words or topics for extemporaneous speaking, just off the cuff kind of topics. Will be very interesting.
Excellent. So the portions of our meetings usually involve the prepared speeches first of our meeting, and then we go into the table topics portion of our meeting, and then we wrap up with the general evaluation period and the educational overview portion of our meeting. And with that being said, we're going to move into our first prepared speech, which is being led none other by the estimable John Murphy. Please welcome to the lecture.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests. A while back, when the topic of icebreaker speech came up, I had the impression that it was your whole life, kind of from birth until what got you here. So I had struggled with that for actually months. Until recently I found out it doesn't have to be that way. It can just be a part of your life. So tonight what I'm going to do is give you a glimpse of a part of my life. My speech is entitled Dreams. I'd like to take you back to a time when I was a lot younger and just learning to drive. I was 4 years old. I would tear up the sidewalks and driveways within a 4-block area of my house in a little red fire engine pedal car. Now mind you, a block for me at that age was between driveways, which is, I don't know, 50 feet or so. Nevertheless, By the time I outgrew that thing, I absolutely wore the tires off of it. That little pedal car sits in my attic now. And as you can imagine, it's a little bit older and a little bit worn out, kind of like I am right now. But not only did I learn to drive by that little car, because it was a fire engine, it sparked a desire in me to become a fireman. I soon moved on to riding bicycles, however, and along with my friends, instead of tearing up sidewalks and driveways, we conquered the neighborhood. I remember back then, there was a fire station, Houston Fire Station 51. It was in our neighborhood, and they had a bicycle registration program where you could take your bicycle down and they would register it, take the serial number off of it and what have you. If it ever got stolen, then the police had a way to track it back to you if it was ever recovered. But I remember being there in that fire station, seeing those fire trucks and just in awe of just what they were, and thought how cool it would be to be able to ride in one, and ring the bell and work the lights and siren and all that. Anyway, as I got older, my dreams soon shifted from becoming a fireman to becoming an athlete. So instead of wearing out little rubber tires, I was wearing out round rubber basketballs. So all through grade school, I was tearing up basketball courts, driveways, shooting hoops, played in church leagues, played through junior high school or middle school, and into high school. Back when I was in high school, there was a show on TV called Emergency. I don't know if some of y'all remember that. It was about a fire station in California, Fire Station 51, just like my neighborhood fire station. It was very popular back then. I thought, how cool would it be to do some of the things that those guys do on TV. As I went on to college, I continued playing ball. When I transferred to the University of Houston, I realized the limits of my career as a basketball player against the likes of Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler. So I retired. So now fast forward several decades through my life. I've gotten married, I've had 2 kids, put them through college, and now a grandfather. We're now living in Northwest Houston, and our neighborhood fire station offered a citizen program that gave you a first-hand look at what the fire service was all about. So naturally, I was hooked. And through that program, I had the opportunity to become a volunteer firefighter. I soon enrolled in fire school, where I was undoubtedly the oldest cadet in my class. Nevertheless, I ended up graduating a level 1 firefighter and was voted Rookie of the Year. Coincidentally, the number assigned to my helmet shield was number 51, just like my childhood fire station and the TV show Emergency. I then took it a step further, and along with my wife Susan, we enrolled in EMT school. We both graduated the top of our class as EMTs. Through the Texas Engineering Extension School at A&M, I went on to achieve my level 1 and 2 rescue training, where I learned patient extrication and how to cut up vehicles, the jaws of life, right? I was an active volunteer firefighter EMT for 3 years before moving to Mobile about 1.5 years ago. My wife and I worked night shift together on an ambulance every Thursday night. I got to experience responding to house fires, apartment fires, numerous car fires, which were my favorite, many vehicle accidents, rollovers, pin ends, experience with lifeline, and literally hundreds of emergency medical calls. In closing, I'd like to say, throughout life, we all have dreams and aspirations. Those dreams often shift and change as we mature and get older. But you don't necessarily have to give up on the ones that may have meant so much to you when you were a little kid. Take the time to chase those dreams, even the ones you think you may have outgrown. The one thing I've learned from being an EMT is that life is delicate and most of all short. Take advantage of an opportunity. You never know what you can accomplish if you put your mind to it. Thank you.
Well, John, I gotta say with much glee, the expectations I set for you were met and exceeded.
Thank you.
What a beautiful message that you shared with us today about your dreams and your aspirations and how you passed on a very positive message to everyone else in attendance today. Thank you for sharing that. Now we're going to move on into our second prepared speech that's being led by Maurice, titled Brother and Sister, which is part of the storytelling manual, and it's under Project 1 titled Folktale. Maurice, please come forward.
Brother and sister were walking hand in hand, and their mother had died, and they were supervised by their wicked stepmother. And they never had a good hour since they'd had their wicked stepmother. This wicked stepmother just fed them breadcrumbs. Even the dog was fed better than brother and sister. One day, they decided to go into the world, and they walked a long way, walked into the woods. They were tired from walking, and they were tired from their sorrow, and it was raining. And the sister said, God is crying along with us. Being tired from the long walk, they found a tree hollow, and they decided to rest there. They rested there all night, and then when the next morning came, and the sun shined brightly over that hollow, the brother became thirsty. There was a spring glistening. At this time, the wicked stepmother, who was also a witch, found out that they had run away. And she went out to try to find them. And she knew that these springs were out there. So she cursed the spring. The first spring that the brother landed, it yelled out, don't drink, or else you'll turn to a tiger. So then the sister says, brother, don't take a sip from the spring, or you'll turn to a tiger, and then you'll come and eat me. So he did not drink from the first spring. Well, I will quench my thirst when we get to the next spring. Got to the next spring, and a voice cried out, if you drink from me, you will turn to a wolf. So the sister says, brother, don't drink from the spring, or else you turn to a wolf, and you will devour me. Then they approached the third spring, and the brother said, I got to take a drink now. I'm so thirsty, I got to take a drink. And the spring says, if you take a drink from me, you will turn to a deer. But before the sister could warn her brother, he already kneeled down and took a sip, and he turned into a young deer. and the sister was distraught. She said, now the hunters will come and kill the young deer, and I'll be miserable out in the woods by myself. So she grabbed the young deer, which was her brother, and she took her garter and put it around his neck. She said that I will take care of you and I will always be with you. So they walked in the woods together and they found a house off in the distance and it was empty. So they decided to stay in the house. The sister, she dressed a little area with grass and bushes to make it comfortable for the deer to lie down. And then the sister decided to go to sleep. And then the next morning, when they both woke up, her and the young deer, there was a sound of huntsmen and dogs and horns. And the deer got excited. I want to run out there and run with the huntsmen and the dogs. And the sister said, no, they'll kill you. I just have the desire to do that. And the brother, who's now a deer, couldn't resist. So he went out to run, but the sister told him, when you come back, you got to knock on the door and say, dear sister, let me in. If you don't say it like that, I won't let you in. So all day, the young deer ran out in front of the huntsmen and the dogs, playing games, running different places through the bushes. And they tried to catch the young deer, but they couldn't catch him. So nightfall came, knocked on the door, dear sister, let me in. So the sister let him in, and they went to sleep for the night. The next morning came, the huntsmen were out again, and the young deer couldn't resist. I need to go out and run with the huntsmen and the dogs. They'll kill you, the sister says. They'll kill you, but he couldn't resist, so he ran out around the huntsmen and the dogs, dodging them. But this time he got a little wound on his foot, and he started limping a little bit. And then he made it to the house, and the sister let him in, but one huntsman saw him, observed him go back in the house. So he goes back to the king and tells him that there's a deer that running around and goes back to the house at night, and someone lets him in. So the king says, I want to follow along with you and follow this deer. In the meantime, the sister put some medicine on the wound, and the wound was so slight that the next morning the deer didn't notice the wound. So he wanted to go out again when he heard the horns of the huntsmen and the dogs. The sister once again says, they will kill you if you go. But I can't resist. So mournfully, the sister let him out again. And he ran all day like he did the previous days. And when it came time to go home, he went. But the king went to the door instead of the deer. Said, dear sister, let me in. And the sister let him in. And the king noticed the beauty of the sister. And the sister was startled that it wasn't the deer. But the king says, you're so beautiful, would you would you like to be my wife? She said yes. So the king took the sister to the castle, but the sister says, we got to take the deer with me. So they went back to the castle, and they were made comfortable, and then soon the sister became queen, had a little son, but in the meantime, the witch found out that the brother and sister weren't dead. The witch, the stepmother, who was a witch, assumed that they would get killed by wild animals, but that wasn't the case. So the stepmother found a way into the castle, and she fashioned herself as a chambermaid, and she had a daughter, an ugly daughter with one eye. And she fashioned her as the queen, but she could not heal that eye. That was the only thing. So as the queen had the baby, the chambermaid or the stepmother or the witch said, well, let me take you to the bath and, to give you strength again. She did that. She closed the door and set it on fire, and supposedly the queen suffocated. And then the daughter, the wicked daughter, was in the bed as if she was the queen. So the king came in to check on the baby boy and the queen, but the chambermaid, who's the stepmother or the witch, said, no, the queen must get her rest. So the king, he stepped out of the room, and then at midnight a nurse came to tend to the baby, and she saw what was happening. And the queen, the real queen, came in whatever form and said, how's my boy? How's my dear? And the nurse didn't say a word the first time. So the next morning, she told the king what had happened, that the queen came in and inquired that there was a false queen in the bed. So the second night, the same thing happened again. The queen came back and said, how's my son? How's the deer? And the king kept quiet the second time. And then this happened one more time at midnight. The queen came in, how's my boy and how's my dear? And the king says, you're my queen. Yes, I am. And then the spell was lifted. The queen was her normal self again, and the deer turned back to her brother. And then he found out through the nurse what was going on. So the stepmother ended up being executed and being burned, and then the daughter of the stepmother, or the false queen, was thrown into the woods and got eaten up by the wild animals. So the king, the queen, and her brother lived happily ever after until their death. Mr. Toastmaster.
It takes a lot of guts to tell an original folktale.
Yes, that's why that's the. I mean, even though that's project number 1, that's the 4th speech out of the book that I did.
Yeah, I remember when we did the folktale challenge earlier this year, and that was quite a brain exercise. All right, so thank you for coming forward and sharing your folktale with us.
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
Now we're done with the prepared speeches portion of our meeting, and we're going to move into the table topics portion of our meeting, being led by Susan. Susan, please come forward.
Honored guests, Toastmasters, I'm happy tonight to be able to lead Table Topics. And basically what Table Topics is I'm going to throw out a question or something, and someone will respond by getting up and addressing it off the top of their head. Just they have that long to figure out what they're going to say, or they'll just speak as they're standing right here in front of the screen. So, I'm going to give you my first topic. Okay. Recently, I don't know if you heard in the news, there was a Chinese doctor who did some DNA sort of mumbo jumbo, and turns out where he was trying to prevent some diseases in some twins. Well, tonight I'm going to ask the first volunteer to talk about messing with DNA and the ethical considerations with doing so. What potential problems could there be with tampering with human DNA? Diego?
Susan, you asked a very good table topics discussion that's going to take a lot of unpacking to do. Longer than a 2-minute maximum time on the table talks, but I'll give it my best shot.
Top line.
I think what immediately comes to mind when I think about DNA engineering of humans is a film called Gattaca, which was a film released in the 90s or late 80s, if not earlier than that, which featured Ethan Hawke, which was about a society of genetically modified humans and how society transformed as a result of that. And it essentially boiled down to the haves and the have-nots of people who have the best traits that are expressed versus those who do not have the resources and the money to have that type of engineering done to them. That really kind of informs my opinion on this matter right now. And right now I'm in a biology class right now that we talk a little bit about this. And the pros essentially boil down to if we have access to if we know the human genome and we know what kinds of genetically heritable diseases happen in humans, isn't the right thing to do to splice out that DNA or make sure that those diseases don't happen when we have the technology to avoid it. But the cons of that emerge that I'm sure has been in the news is about, well, do we give humans the ability to do this type of work? Is it right for humans to determine the genetic destiny of people? That's really the pros and cons aspect of it to me. And it's really hard for me to pick a side, but I would say on the spot that I think it's important to use DNA engineering for the purposes of removing diseases specifically. I don't think it's important. I think it's important for us to avoid the slippery slope of then going down and saying, okay, we want to make genetically modified babies to be the best that they can be. I think that's kind of a slippery slope that I would be in favor of avoiding. But for the purposes of using DNA engineering to prevent preventable diseases, I'm in support of that type of research. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you. Excellent. Better than I thought. Okay. All right. Next one. What's the most helpful thing you ever did for someone? Oh.
Madam Table Topics Master, Toastmasters, guests. The only reason why I volunteered to do this is because I did something today for somebody. That young lady who was a friend of mine posted something on Facebook Friday night that said that her mother needs a Christmas miracle. And I immediately private messenger and said what's going on. And turns out she was having some serious financial difficulties. Her stove got zapped by lightning and they were having cooker meals next door. She got hit with a high insurance bill.
just one bill after another completely depleted her savings and had nothing, basically has nothing to go on. And her daughter is in her final year at Southern Miss in pharmacy. She's going to be a pharmacist, so expenses are quite high. So today I went and bought her a new stove. So it's, and it was with help because I do run the St. Vincent de Paul Society at my church, so it wasn't financially on me, but the ability to step up and help someone just get through the day. And sometimes it's just the little things, just helping people just get past an issue so that they can move forward, because they get so bogged down in having things that they worry about and problems that you don't have to be a miracle worker, just be there. That's all you have to do, and that's what we're really, that's our purpose in life here, is just to help each other. So, I'm Hilltoppers Toastmasters.
Nice, thank you so much. It's sort of, well, we do that all year long, hopefully, but especially during this time of year, you think about, Christmas is a time where we want to help other people. All right. Well, a good segue for this next one. Speak to this quote by Dr. Seuss. Maybe Christmas, the Grinch thought, doesn't come from a store.
So I think this is an important quote in our day and age because the growing issue with consumerism is becoming quite a problem, in my opinion, now that we have the never-ending constant stream of the Joneses, so you can see what everybody's doing and everybody has. Everybody likes to shine their best light. So I think kind of stepping away from all the gifts and the things that we want to get for Christmas is important, and really focusing on family and friends and just spending time with people, telling stories, and trying to commercialize, or not commercialize Christmas as much as it is at this point. You know, we've had Cyber Monday already and Black Friday and all the craziness that come with that, and it kind of takes away from the true meaning of what Christmas is all about. And I think it's a good point. It's a simple quote from The Grinch, which has, I guess he has a new movie out now. I haven't seen it yet, but I heard it's good. So I think that's my take on the quote. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Cody. Okay. All right. Moving on, that was kind of a good one about Christmas. And so continuing on in that vein, I have another quote from Francis of Assisi. For it is in giving that we receive. All right.
Well, St. Francis of Assisi is actually one of my favorite saints, actually. He was actually my saint for confirmation, because I looked up a lot of information about him, and the things I read remind me of who I am. He loved animals, he had a simple life, and we always need to strive to be simplicity, because without simplicity, how can we survive? So, I've been saying about the quote, well,
Did you find it?
the quote is, for it is in giving that we receive. Well, if you actually think about, getting married, it's actually receiving the love that you have, and you're actually giving yourself to that other person. but you're not just giving yourself to the other person. You're giving your life to God, and God, the priest, as well, is trying to grant you the bond that you want to live out. So, what I'm saying about the simple life, it helps to figure out who you are and figure out like simplicity is what you need. Without simplicity, marriage isn't really, true in yourself. Thank you.
It's nice to hear people's backgrounds, and it's kind of interesting about your confirmation. It's really neat. Thanks for sharing that.
Anytime.
Let's see. Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, we can do one more.
Okay. What job did you want to have as a child? Did you ultimately choose that profession? Why or why not? You're not going to give somebody else a chance?
Well, if they want to.
Okay.
No rules doing it, so.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, first of all, my dreams change every single day. So, I always say one thing after another, like today I want to become a chef, and then the next day I want to be a singer. Why don't you just well, I love to write music, and I do. Well, the truth is, I've been writing music since I was like young. So right now I have over 11 songs. 11 songs. So, you, Brian, is one of my favorite country artists. And I used his song, Most People Are Good, as bass. Well, what I'm saying is that it's okay to have thoughts and ideas of what you want to do, especially when you're a kid. Some people think like, well, what we do in a kid, we will do in the future. That's not always true, because when you're a kid, you don't know what's realistic and what's not. But when you grow up older and become more wiser, you understand that everything changes. So you want to get used to those changes, and sometimes those changes might make you think in another way. But that's okay. It's good to have dreams. It's good to have what you have right now. But the truth is, the dream is, for me, is to get married, have my own family, provide them food, provide them everything they need. And actually I look up to my parents because they are my truest people that I look up to. And I also want the taxes, but you don't want to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That concludes table topics for tonight. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Toastmaster.
Thanks, Susan. Those were some really good table topics. Thank you for providing that for us. Now we're going to transition into our evaluation portion of our meeting. And Cody, you're the general manager, right? Okay. So Cody will step up to the podium to lead this part.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first evaluator for tonight's meeting. And that's going to be Tom. He's evaluating John's icebreaker speech. Let's welcome Tom.
General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and John. You're one step ahead of me. I haven't done my icebreaker yet in Pathways. So this is my first evaluation in Pathways, so we can take that as understanding how I graded that. I really, really liked your speech. I was curious as to whether or not your number on your basketball uniform was 51. That would have been perfect. But I like the way you delivered it. It was you're very calm, and you have a great presence at the podium, the lectern here, which is good. Smoothly through the story. I didn't notice any crutch words anywhere along the way. I thought it was delivered very well. There are a couple of things that I would recommend. The 3 general comments: you excelled at ease and comfort in delivering your speech, which was perfect. You may want to work on 2 things. And one, and this is kind of a comment for everybody, and a teaching point, is there was a little bit of commotion as you were going into your speech. Sometimes just stop and wait and let the commotion settle. Let everybody, because everybody's distracted by what's going on, they're going to miss part of what you had to say. And you had a great message. It was a really, really good message. Which leads me to the second thing to work on, which would be the timing. Because you had some very important points in there that sometimes if you slow down a little bit and throw in a couple of pauses, it really will help to drive that home. The thing that you need to challenge yourself with is maybe a little more emotion and a little more vocal variety in what you're doing. That's all. That's the only thing that I can see. I think it was outstanding, and I can't wait to hear you give it again. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom, for that evaluation of John's speech. Next, we have Heather, who's going to evaluate Maurice's speech. Evaluate his photo.
Toastmasters and honored guests. Maurice's speech was titled Brother and Sister, and it was part of his folk tale storytelling guide, or whatever you want to call it. So how did the speaker attract your interest to the story, and was I entertained? I thought it was good that when you came up, you kind of like were waiting for everybody to kind of settle down, and you waited to get the entire audience's attention. So I noticed that, and I thought that was a really good technique that you did. And I thought that the opening was pretty interesting. You caught my attention as you started telling this story. It wasn't like, I'm gonna talk about this, like you just like got right into it, and it kind of made me think about, okay, what's he doing? Is this like his life? Is this just a random story? Is this a story I've heard before? And I thought it was a really good way to start off. Was I entertained? Yes, I was entertained. I think that the rest of the audience was also entertained. And something that I kind of like asked myself a lot was, why does the deer want to go out so bad? Like, why can't he just stay at home? But I don't know. Anyway, what techniques did you use that were very effective? I thought it was good that you were expressive with the dialogue. Like when the sister was saying something to her brother, you kind of differentiated between her and the brother and his excitement to want to go out and be dangerous, I guess. So that was good. The use of vocal variety in telling the story, I just thought like vocally maybe you could be more smooth. But aside from that, again, I think the differentiation between the characters was really good, as well as the differentiation between different parts throughout the story and the overall tone at any given point. What parts of the story were most exciting? I thought it was pretty exciting when the sister married the king, and when he just like kind of randomly came to their house and they decided to get married. I thought that was exciting. It was also kind of exciting when the witch tracked them down and started working in the castle, I guess, and tried to make her daughter the queen. So that was exciting. What was the idea or mood the speaker was trying to convey? I'm not really sure what the purpose of the story was, or the moral of the story, but I guess you were trying to convey this folk tale, like somebody might hear from their mom when they're laying down for bedtime from a storybook, and I really kind of got that vibe. So that's the mood that I saw that was conveyed. Was the speaker successful? Yes, I think that you were successful in holding everybody's attention and telling us a story. The only thing that I would say about like the whole thing and the story itself is that I felt like maybe the end could have, I mean, I know you were trying to wrap up because of time, but I felt like it could have been like more smoothly ended. It felt a little bit abrupt. Was I able to visualize the story in my mind, and were the parts of what parts of the story were most impressive? And yes, I was able to visualize it. And there was so much that happened. There was a lot to follow. But again, I think it was most impressive when the king married the queen or the sister, and it just kind of, I don't know, it was exciting and it really kept my attention. So a strength that I saw is that, or actually I'll start with something that you could improve on. I felt like maybe you could make more eye contact throughout the room, and that a strength that I saw was that I could feel that you were really interested in the story, or that like you knew the story and you were expressing like the different characters and like the overall story and what was happening, even if it was happening really fast. And through your interest, it made me more interested, so I thought that was a really good strength. And just keep moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Evaluator.
Thanks, Heather, for the evaluation of Maurice's speech.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're going to move on to the other parts of the evaluation. Gretchen, can you please give us the timers report for tonight?
Yes. The first speaker, John, was at 6 minutes and 5 seconds. Maurice's speech was 12 minutes and 37 seconds. Table topics, Diego was 2 minutes and 23 seconds. Cody was 1 minute and 14 seconds. Tom was 1 minute and 26 seconds. Donovan's first tabletop topics was 2 minutes and 7 seconds, and his second time up was 2 minutes and 26 seconds. For the evaluations, Tom's evaluation of John's icebreaker was 1 minute and 22 seconds, and Heather's evaluation of Maurice's folk tale was 4 minutes and 42 seconds.
Good. Thank you, Gretchen. I'm Mary.